Cause you're listening to Jams and Tea, you won't see the show on your TV, so we talk about things musically. Cause you're listening to Jams and Tea, you're listening to Jams and Tea.
Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And today we are coming at you with two new reviews for two new albums that are coming out. We are going to be talking about the latest project from Fell from the Tree. Is that what it is? Is that, am I getting that right? Okay, Fell from the Tree, and the album Enough, and the other album, which is called something.
Fuck art.
Fuck art. But why couldn't I remember that? That's
By
so
the Dirty Nil.
By the
That's
Dirty
probably
Nil.
why.
Yeah.
And yes, and after that, as we do every week, we're going to be covering a third album, the recommended album this week, and this week is Tyler's recommended record, which is The Meadowlands by Wrens. So check that out after the main episode goes up.
Yeah, as always, that will be a separate video for our record club this week, but yeah, it's going to be a good one. So stick around for that. Right.
The Will Wrens. I've done it.
The
Will Wrens.
Comedy.
We've mastered it.
You know what? Fuck you guys.
Okay, so as we always do, let's move on to our first segment, which is where we discuss records unrelated to the podcast that we've been listening to in the last 7 days. Jake, why don't you kick us off?
Well, I will say I will integrate it into a bit of a promotion, is that I have all week in preparation for a specific episode been listening to the discography of one Miss Laura Marling, where we have recorded, Saoirse, Tyler, and I, an episode about her entire discography. That's going to be going up sometime next week, so
That's
get
right.
hyped for that. That is a good-ass episode, and
was.
I had a lot
really
of
good.
fun making it.
Yeah, I was very proud of that.
Yeah, so it was great. Following on the back of last week, I mentioned I'm sort of on a slow dive kick. You know, that was upside down. Cool, love that for me. But I went and revisited another shoegaze classic and also podcast core record that we have talked about on our episode where Tyler and I covered the Verve's discography. Is that I listened to the Verve's "A Storm in Heaven," which, good gosh golly, that's still a perfect record. If you like shoegaze albums, Tyler giving me the thumbs up, thank you, friend. But if you like shoegaze and you haven't heard "A Storm in Heaven," you are doing it wrong. Please go do that. It is
That's perfect, because I do like shoegaze music.
as you should. As I mentioned on Twitter the other day, the objectively best genre of music.
It's quite fitting, Jake, that you would bring that up because the Storm in Heaven, the record club we're doing today, the Meadowlands, was my favorite album of all time when I was 17, and Storm in Heaven was my favorite album of all time when I was 15. So
Wow, lots of just Tyler core. We love to see it. Really.
yeah, exactly. I for one very much love to see it.
I also listen to, I am trying to actively listen to more live albums just because it is not something I have done a lot of in my life, and I am attempting to correct that by going back through my favorite artists and checking out some of their live albums. Notably, this week I checked out Anesthetize, which is the Porcupine Tree live album of their favorite, or my favorite record of theirs, which is Fear of a Blank Planet. And the live album version of which is super duper long. It features songs from basically their entire career up until that point, and the album itself. And yeah, that's a top 10 record of all time for me, and the live album is better. I don't know. There's not a, like, there is not enough superlatives in the English language to describe to you what hearing that for the first time was like in its, like, whole. It was magical. And we're also going to be talking about Porcupine Tree in the very, very near future. So, wow, I am just so good at integrating all of my things. And speaking of integrating things that we're going to be talking about, oh my god, I'm going to do it again. I listened to Julian Baker's both of her albums yesterday. I listened to Sprained Ankle and Turn Out the Lights, both of which are exceedingly good words. Excellent singer-songwriter records. used to prefer Sprained Ankle just because it was a bit more like it's a bit more intimate and it's it's leaner and Turn Out the Lights is a bit more it's got a bit more of like a slowcore influence and like I feel like it's just there's a bit more to dig into there, so it's a record that pays off when you revisit it more, and now I do like it more. But I mean, both are excellent, and I'm just so excited for Little Oblivions because the singles have been so good. I love you, Julian. Please marry me. And the last album I will mention today is I will give a shout out to my favorite record by one of my favorite bands, which is The Cure, and that is their 90s album Wish. Often unsung record of theirs, sort of gets overlooked when you compare it to the Disintegrations, the Pornographies, the Head on the Doors, but Wish, notably the album, it has the single Friday I'm in Love, which is kind of hilarious because it's sort of like the Third Eye Blind album, where the single from it is not indicative of the rest of the album, because Wish is just like, if you thought that The Cure made sad jams, man, boy howdy, Wish is just, it's just the most dour thing they've ever made. It is just exceedingly sad. To Wish Impossible Things, maybe the best song they ever made.
You ever just listen to Wish Impossible Things and just like
and that comes after Letter to Elise, and you're just like,
oh god, the emo anthem.
It's I adore that album. Like I love it every time. Or I love it more each time I listen to it, and it's like it's perfect back to front. The best Cure album.
Understandable, no.
Would have been listening to No World for Tomorrow by Coheed and Cambria. Easy, like
more like
9.5.
Good album.
And it's still like only my third favorite and it's amazing.
Valid.
It's absolutely amazing. It's
Your third favorite.
Some of their best tracks on that album, like title track, Gravemakers and Gunslingers.
If Coheed decided to make a Judas Priest song.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And then there's also like Feathers and other
Radio Bye Bye.
Yeah, it's just
albums that have a killer second half.
Yeah. No,
damn.
It's just amazing. One of the best prog albums of that year. Next, another prog album, I know, shocking. Foxtrot by Genesis, which I enjoyed a fair bit, but I did find it a bit filler heavy, to be quite honest. There were...
That's a roast because it's only got like 6 songs on it.
Yeah.
No, even with only 6 songs.
I like In a Silent Way, but it's like kind of filler heavy, don't you think?
Yeah. No, that is to indicate I wasn't crazy on it, but I do appreciate it a lot.
You better not have a bad word to say about Supper's Ready, boy.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Tyler has just graduated to full boomer with that sentence.
It's only one of the greatest prog tracks ever made.
It's good. It's good.
When he said I don't know, he means I know. I just don't know if I want to say this right now.
I don't know if you're ready for this information.
That's about right. So I'll just move swiftly along from that. To Music's Lunatic Harness, a very classic 90s IDM album. It's got a plethora of amazing tracks in the first half and a plethora of god-awful tracks like fucking London in the second half, where it just becomes the equivalent of like, what does this button on the synthesizer do? This, put it in the song. it becomes a bit of a mess towards the end, but overall it's still quite good. And I thought the companion EP to it, Brace Yourself, is even better than it. But it's worth checking out. Something entirely similar, because the two have collaborated. I listened to Aphex Twin's the Richard D. James album, which has just some absolutely classic revolutionary IDM cuts on it. It's really short, really brisk listen, lots of fun. Good stuff, even if there are some points which I'm not too crazy about that sound just a bit generic, perhaps. But final thing, the Dead Kennedys compilation album Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death, the last thing the band released when the proper band was together. It's a lot of great tracks kind of from their that were not formally released on studio albums. Of course, being a compilation, the production and sound of it is quite inconsistent, but there's still a good, like, 2/3 of the songs which are great, and then 1/3 that's completely disposable. So it's interesting. And that's what I listened to.
A lot of what I've been listening to this week is I've been re-listening to an album by metalcore band called Counterparts, which released an album in 2019 called Nothing Left to Love, and that's like my third favorite album of that year.
Oh shit!
It's like really metal. It's metalcore that's like super influenced by like emo / post-hardcore, and it's like just a bajillion% my jam.
So touche amore.
If they like started working with Converge,
dope. I need to listen to this.
Yes, you do. Another thing that I listened to was I re-listened to Phoebe Bridgers' "Stranger in the Alps."
Me too.
Because I was like, it was inspired by our discussion on it, where I was like, where we were all like, this would be better if it had the killer version of Georgia on it. So that's the version that I listened to. I made a playlist and just replaced the cuts. And that version of that album I like more than Punisher. I cannot rank it above Punisher because it is not an official release. But there's that.
You gave Punisher a 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Stranger in the Alps confirmed 11.
Yes.
Look, it's got smoke signals on it. She is allowed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still like the best song I've ever heard in my life. So.
Also, you missed my heart.
Phoebe Bridgers invents new number. Her power.
Phoebe
My
Bridgers
queen.
invents Mark Kozilek.
Yes, as of recently, she now gets credit for all of his work.
Damn. Yeah, I also, inspired by certain conversations that we were having, I re-listened to the second stage Turbine Blade by Coheed and Cambria.
As did I.
Just a fucking perfect. It's perfect. And the fact that it is only my second favorite of theirs is a little bit annoying.
Honestly,
because it's like how I should not like this band this much. It doesn't make any sense. But that's about all I have.
Over and out, Connecticut.
Yep.
Rock over London.
Good eye, sniper.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with what was the first time listen for me that has since shot right into canonical favorite albums of all time, which I listened to the morning after we recorded our last episode. and it is the Giles Corey self-titled record.
Fire.
Which, Jesus fucking Christ,
Pain.
it's like if you put all of my taste in music into a blender and then made it a record. I just,
God, it's so good.
it literally, it's like gothic Americana and country and folk and just horror and emotional bleakness and like post-rock as well a bit. I loved it.
I would
need
be
to listen to
lying
it
to
more
you if I
before
told
can-
you
yeah.
that I did not dance in the stock room to the last minute of No One Is Ever Going to Want You, because I absolutely did.
Like that's
Yeah,
like
but wow.
Dance of Death. Like you turn into a skeleton and you're dancing with.
I mean, I look like a marionette.
Yeah,
That's appropriate to
I
look
want
like a marionette.
to feel how I feel.
And
When
I
I'm
am asleep.
deep.
Thank you,
Deep, deep.
Mr. Corey.
It's literally like he just takes all of like my, with the exception of the first track, which is sad all the time in every aspect of it. It's like he took all of my depressive thoughts at their most literal, and put them to like really nice folk music. It's crazy good.
Dan Barrett just be like, do you ever just be sad and want to die? And it's just like, yes.
But what if you were also Hank Williams? Although he did write I'm so lonesome I could die, so that's appropriate, I guess.
I mean, dude, welcome to country music.
What else I listened to this week? Lots of stuff. I listened to My Favorite Things by John Coltrane, which was beautiful. Title track especially, but the whole record slaps really. Again, it feels weird doing like critical talk about John Coltrane. It's like, it's John Coltrane. What can I say? You know. But also my first Mogwai record, Happy Songs for Happy People, which I enjoyed muchly. I continued my going back and rediscovering Frank Turner. Listened to England Keep My Bones, which
Banger.
yeah, it's not like, considering how much I love the band's best work, it's like not in that echelon. It's much more sort of inconsistent, disparate, not so holistic. But my God, I like half of the tracks on it fucking perfect, and the other half is still pretty good. And I, after I listened to Ulcerate last week, I continued 2020 catching up, and I'll just run through 3 records very quickly that I listened to. I listened to Fake It Flowers by, what is this, Babadoobie. I listened to Songs by Adrian Lenker. And I listened to Inner Song by Kelly Lee Owens. All very different records, all quite good. 2 very good. And that's what my week outside of Laura Marling has been like.
Very good. Well, my week was dominated by Miss Marling, so credit to her.
I'd like to be dominated by Miss Martin. I need to leave.
Oh. Oh.
Excuse me.
Got him.
But yeah, I spent most of.
Let's take about 10 to 20% off there, Jake.
I think I just listened to, I had only one first listen in the last 7 days that had nothing to do with this podcast. So I'll shout that out. But before I do, I want to shout out a re-listen that I had yesterday. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, but recently, I've certainly tweeted about it quite a bit, but recently I've been getting super into Steely Dan.
Yes,
really super into Steely Dan. And I...
Once again, Tyler become boomer.
You're 14 years old? What's your favorite Steely Dan record?
Well, the thing is, like, I'm not going to, but I could talk about Steely Dan for like hours. In fact, I may try to lobby for a B-sides on them some point in the future.
Okay, I'll do that. Go on.
Even if I'm the only one. But anyway,
I've never heard a Steely Dan song.
Well, the thing is-
I listened to
maybe
one of
maybe
their
a worst to
albums.
best.
no, maybe, but I don't know. I reckon I could change some people's conceptions about Steely Dan, because there's a lot of misconceptions about Steely Dan that have resulted from decades of a particular image being projected by popular music journalism and just by general culture, that kind of fundamentally, I think, misunderstands how fucking awesome they actually are as a band, like as performers, as musicians. People have this conception of them as being these incredibly studious and pretentious dudes who like labor over a guitar lick for hours. And yes, that's kind of true. I mean, it's absolutely true, but it kind of neglects the fact that the end result of that is something which unequivocally whips. They are just such an incredibly tightly wound but incredibly infectious band. Like their songs are just bustling with all these different instruments, jazz instrumentation, rock instrumentation, and the key to it all is these absolutely hilarious songwriting exercises and character studies of the most awful and disgusting and pitiful characters in the world. And they tell these, and I don't know. Anyway, I listened.
Didn't you tweet about one of the songs being about a guy who gets off to showing children pornography?
Yes, that's on this album. On the one I was going to talk about, Katie
I love Kill List.
He
Well, like-
demonetized.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Katie Lied is my favorite Steely Dan record up to this point. I still have to go through the next few records of theirs that come after it. But it just fucking rocks. It goes hard. The songs are really funny. The songs are really smart. They're moving as well. Like, they're truly a band that contain multitudes. Every time you think you get your head around what kind of quality you describe the writing, whether it's sarcastic, whether it's satirical, whether it's cheeky, whether it's mean-spirited, they do something completely different. And yeah, they're such a fascinating and fun band, and I don't think that they're hard work in the slightest. They just rip.
I just want you to know, I would happily do a Steely Dan B-sides.
Well,
If you
that
wanted to.
is good to know. I'll keep that in mind.
Don't
Anyway,
they have like 20 albums or some shit?
no,
Well,
they have
actually
like
only
8.
have a couple.
They have a run of I think 7 albums in the 70s, and then 2 post-reunion albums, and that's it.
All of them have above a 4 on Sputnik Music, so wow.
Yeah, like
I know.
I can't
know one of
speak
them
for
got,
their.
like a 1.9 on Pitchfork or something.
That was one of their.
It's one of their reunion ones, yeah.
Which I can't
No,
speak for. I've heard mixed things about them, but their run in the 70s is pretty much, if you like any one of those records, you'll like all of them. Anyway, moving on, I'll talk about the one first listen I did this week, which was to a Square Pusher album called Eufabulum, which is one of his later period records that gets less acclaim and less acknowledgement. And I have to say, I don't have a fucking clue why, because it absolutely slaps from front to back. It is the loudest, most aggressive, but also one of the friendliest in terms of melody. It's these incredibly booming electro, almost EDM inspired, but distinctly Square Pusher tracks that have these gigantic synths that are just beautiful and pillowy and melodic that drive every track. It's incredibly immediate. It's incredibly fast paced. I went for a drive in the middle of the night last night and put it on, and it was like the perfect setting. Like, it just bangs from front to back. It is not your grandma's plink plonk IDM. This is real fucking bangers. And it deserves
No
more.
electric guitars, all Swedish producers, 100% pure, uncut IDM.
Well, it's funny you say no electric guitars, because this is, I believe, the first Square Pusher album I've heard, which has almost no organic instrumentation. It's pure electronic stuff, and somehow that doesn't lose the charm of the organic sound that he has. It still feels incredibly human and incredibly fun and cheeky as well, in the way that all the best Square Pusher stuff is. I think Square Pusher is maybe not taken too seriously, because some people think that he's kind of like, I don't know, too irreverent, whatever that means. People have, I don't know, music journalism is terrible at talking about IDM, and things get all stereotypical, like Ortica are the great IDM musicians because they're the serious ones who make real, and that's obviously bullshit. But then Square Pusher's like, oh, this kid who's throwing his toys around, and that's obviously bullshit as well. And it sucks that those kinds of conceptions often come before the music for people who are approaching, those kinds of records. But anyway, I wanted to shout that out because it's lots of fun, and I think you'd all enjoy it, and all our listeners would enjoy it. All right, and that's basically me.
All 5 of our listeners.
Right. So what is up on
All 5 of
the
which are
docket
here.
first? Yeah.
Well,
What is up on the
actually,
docket first?
first up is Fell from
Oh,
the Tree.
Yes.
And enough. So, hi, Hannah. Let's get into it and talk about this incredibly special and interesting record. So, for some context, Fell from the Tree is the musical recording project of one Hannah Jocelyn, who is a music writer and artist in her own right. You may have read her writing before for Pitchfork or a number of other major music publications. I became aware of Hannah because we have a lot of mutual musical interests, bands like Everything Everything and Frightened Rabbit, and lots of sadcore indie folk
That
stuff.
is how we became mutuals. I'm pretty sure she noticed that my username was the Winter of Mixed Drinks and was like, I'm gonna give this person a follow.
Yeah, so when I became aware that Hannah was putting out a new record and that it was quite an important record for her because it represented her, it coincided with her coming out as trans. And that is obviously something that is deeply woven into the fabric of the record. But obviously it's also a record of many different shades and many different feelings. And I think that even if Hannah's particular experience is not one that you have experienced, there's a lot of universality in what Hannah and the emotions that Hannah talks about, and in a lot of the specific experiences and relationships that Hannah details on this record. So yeah, does anyone have a desire to launch into their review? Jake?
I do, just because it is incredible because, like, I had no context other than just like, oh, I'm mutuals with Hannah, I've read some of her writing and I've enjoyed it, and then it's just like, oh, we're going to cover a musical project, and naturally, when it's just like, oh, person makes musical project, and she does have several collaborators that she mentions on the note, the little release that she had, that's like included, like some people helped her do production, some people helped her do verses, but like when I have in my head, it's just like, oh, it's a person who's going to make an album. I imagine like, somebody sitting in a room with an acoustic guitar and a microphone that they bought at Walmart, and just playing a guitar and singing about like it's basically what I would do if I made an album. And then I listen to like immediately from the first track, and I'm just like, oh, this is like this is like the Postal Service. Okay, let's go. And as a result, I got a very different thing, and I ended up, well, I mean, not gonna bury the lead. I ended up really loving this thing. I think it's a terrific album, and it caught me by surprise, and every time I listened to it, I liked it that much more, and it's an album that, like, it's one of the few albums that's rare enough that, like, when I listen to it, I also just come back to single actual tracks from it just to listen and ponder in and of themselves, separate from the album experience, which is, like, a true sign that I have truly gelled with this shit. I think in sound-wise, I mentioned that it's there's very heavy Postal Service influence. I was also reminded several times of Bareface's Brockhampton stuff, just sort of in that like really heavy electro pop kind of sound, but also like the moodiness and the spaciousness of it. Even though a lot of the mixes here are really rich and full, which that's maybe the coolest thing about this is how expertly I think this is put together. Like, it is very clearly a bedroom pop album, but I think the arrangements and the production is tight and full and just incredible sounding. It only comes from somebody who clearly has experience not just with music, but in the making and engineering of said music. Like, whether or not, she is an expert or whatever, I don't know. But she clearly knows how to put a fucking tune together. I think that I also really love Hannah's voice on here. It's perfectly suited to this kind of dreamy bedroom pop sound. Another influence that I couldn't shake, at least something that I kept in my head kept coming back to comparatively, was Charlie XCX's How I'm Feeling Now. It's obviously less blown out and less hyper poppy, but it's the same DNA and even the same ethos with its very intimate, very outside looking in kind of perspective. And I also found myself drawing a lot of comparisons to the most recent National album, specifically sonic timbres on songs like I Am Easy to Find or Rylan. Um, which again, these are all things I really, really like, so bravo. Um, there are good job, Jake. There are specific lyrical passages that, upon first listen and just normal re-listens, that hit me like a bolt of lightning. It is obviously not the exact same thing, and I think Hannah's writing has an inherent, as Tyler put it, universality to it that make it relatable to any feeling of anybody who's felt isolated or has felt like an outsider in some way. But there are lots of things that resonate with me here specifically. The feelings of loneliness, being isolated, being unsure of oneself and one's own identity, dysphoria. All these things are very, very well put together, and they are a steady current of the album focusing around these issues. That said, it is also never like miring you in it. This is never an album that I found like difficult to get through, despite the fact that it is very emotionally potent. Which again, you have to be a really good artist to be able to strike that balance. I just get the impression that, at least from this album for me, that Hannah understands the pain of these issues and seems rather tired of it. I almost think the album title, Enough, is just sort of her rejection of that in many ways. And I think
But
it's
this
also...
follows up an EP called Not Enough, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with her other stuff, which I didn't know that she had other things, but
Right.
in the liner notes she did mention that she had other stuff, which I actually really want to listen to now. But I feel like it's still sort of built into the core thesis of her sort of. There are specific songs on here that sort of imply a rejection of being isolated, being in the closet, stuff like that. And yeah, when it comes to the sound, I think the album is very, if I could describe it in a way that doesn't really make sense, is that it's very icy. The cover certainly helps with this implication, but I think there is a general quiet, brittle timbre to the record that makes me think of something crystalline. It's obviously not the same sonically, but it's the same feeling that I get when I listen to something like Bjork's Vespertine or Pygmalion by Slowdive. The first track, Treadwater, the Treadwater hook is inescapably catchy. It's been running through my head this entire week. The clattering percussion in the background adds a palpable feeling of anxiety to this song, which I feel goes along with the lyrics really well. The first set of lyrics, which really, really hit me, are I thought I needed more time to sort it out. I guess I prayed too hard for the world to stop, form a chrysalis as I'm laying on the couch, emerge out of focus against the backdrop. Which also brings me to the point that this is also, I think, tangentially or mainly sort of an album about feeling isolated because of quarantine, just because I'm pretty sure this was made throughout the entirety of last year. At least that's the impression that I got from the notes. And that shows here. The tread water, but it feels like I'm standing still refrain lyric, it inevitably makes me think of Frightened Rabbit. The water metaphors, and of course the swim until you can't see land, but it's like a complete inversion of that idea.
Yeah.
I feel like the production on What You Want is specifically phenomenal. The vocal mixing is flawless, as is the delivery. The first verse is great. It's a really poignant examination of how relating your experiences to another person is always inherently like being on thin ice, because, as Hannah puts it, if I'm to say I know how you feel, how deep does it run? This sort of feels like anyone who's had close friends who have struggled through this last year can relate to this insecurity sneaking up on them. I know it has me. Weird Place, instrumentally, picks up the tempo a lot, which contrasts by how dark I find the song to actually be, which seems to be about a sort of mutually toxic relationship defined by both emotional and spatial distance, which, again, feel like that's an immensely potent topic as of late. I love the minimal start and gradual build. A sucker for songs that just sort of hit you in the face, coming out of the gate with nothing but vocals, and then sort of build from that, like on the next song. In the notes for the album, Hannah said she just sort of had to throw in the towel with this song in terms of sonic influences and just accept that, in her words, this song is an electro swing version of River of Dreams. And unless there's another song called River of Dreams, I absolutely see this comparison in terms to the melody of the Billy Joel song. So kudos. I love the sort of fake out ending we've got here, sort of builds only to fizzle out and seamlessly transition into the song Good Thing, which I love that shit. I take this song mostly as one about perspective. I personally live in perpetual fear of constantly being wrong or in the wrong when it comes to a relationship or dynamic, and this song mines this fear very potently of what happens when you sort of disengage from a problem with another person, specifically a parental figure, I think, and just sort of, you get in your own head and start to cushion the blow with self-assurance rather than confront a real problem, which, again, the lyrics here are very, very pointed and poignant about subjects that are very, very specific, but I think that everybody can relate to. Good Thing is one of the songs that make me mystified that this is like a bedroom pop, like amateur or whatever effort, because goddamn it sounds good. The build-up in it reminds me of something that you'd find on the 1975 second album, a song that reads to me about trying to embrace the side of your gender identity that you sort of have to acquire once you realize who you are. Lots of singular moments where I'm like, yeah, I have felt this. And this sounds to me, this sounds like me when I am personally feeling particularly dysphoric and talking to myself about it, which I feel is a considerable achievement on her behalf when you take into account how musically compelling this is, because it could be long and rambly and like just not be musically coherent, and it is. I loved the note that Hannah included about Never Alone, where some of the ideas are related to a Black Bear song, where he references an emo chick that's broken, and this song is, as they put it, is a song if that emo chick was trans, which is just well said. I also just kind of like the groove that this song has, which contrasts heavily with its emotional darkness, much like on Weird Place. Breaking Point starts out with these compressed drums and a synth line, which combination makes me feel like this is a hyperpop version of a Block Party song, but like better than that sounds. The tasteful hits of keyboard here are fantastic. It's a really poignant song about, as Hannah puts it, gaining newfound will to live and living to regret it, which is like, Jesus. This song is like a song that I think about, irrespective of the album. The super subtle layered vocal harmonies, if that is indeed what they sound like that at the midway point, are fucking fantastic. This song is also structurally super dynamic, as a lot of these songs are, but they're never unwieldy or confused. Cannot get over how much I love the way Long Road sounds. It is addictive to listen to. Again, it's more 1975 vibes. The song is about sort of the fine line of drawing boundaries for yourself with other people and what you should be willing to put up with. And the sort of string passages in the second half are just positively fantastic. I think that's a contribution from another musician, which, whenever that shows up, is great. The way they sound less and less electronic as you hear them in this song, inspired production choice. Body is an interlude, and I love the way that this sounds. It's meant as a sort of a thematic reprieve for a moment, and typically this stuff is just not my bag, but this bridges the gap between two very difficult to process emotionally songs, which brings us to Dress, what I would argue is the moment of the album. The best song on here, and I've been showering every song here with praise, so I want it to be noted how much of an achievement that is in and of itself. But yeah, this is incredible. You can feel the direct influence from Everything's No Reptiles on this song throughout, but this song is a behemoth both thematically and instrumentally. It starts off as something busier, then becomes more minimal with the pianos, the strings here are just aching, when the vocals start to break out on the "Try to Make a Difference" line and the beginning of the instrumental is reprised, it starts this euphoric build that is nothing short of show-stopping. Hannah
So
directly
it's
stated
so fucking good.
it's
Fuck.
seriously, like, I have been listening to this song constantly and feeling sad. But Hannah directly stated in the notes with this song that there is an ongoing theme with her music that is it worth it to live if this is what living will be like?
Yep.
And this specifically in reference to the subject matter of the song is felt here, which is about Hannah going to a party and dressing specifically femininely, saying that she knew that this experience would draw forth some sort of creative inspiration, and so she could make a song from it. And damn, she called her fucking shot and hit that motherfucker right out of the park. This feels like a microcosm of the whole record. It is a 6-minute long track, and it does not lose its footing for a second. This is one of those songs that caught me dead in my tracks when I first listened to this at work and made me have to go into the stockroom to just take a moment to breathe. The lyric where I was just like, I'm not okay, I need to sit, was, I don't want to die in here, but I don't want to lose it all out there. I was just like, fuck me, Jesus Christ. Which I'm assuming is in reference to being in the closet, or is just a general metaphor for the difficulty of expressing oneself. It is a lyric that, quite honestly, made me tear up.
Being in the stock room, so to speak.
Hey! I listened to this more than a few times, totally irrespective of the album, just staring at my ceiling fan in my room in the middle of the night. The vocal performance here, her vocals are great throughout, but here, fantastic. Like, I love this song so much, and I literally want to, like, thank Hannah personally for, like, making it. Like, the rest of the album could be, like, bad, and I would still, like, get on my knees and grovel. I mean, again, it's not like there have been a lot of releases or anything this year, but this is like an absolute shoe-in for Best Song of the Year contender 2021. Good Advice is the closer, is an epilogue of sorts. It is a direct mirror to the first track, which is about a reluctance to open up, whereas here the song is about being seen. Afraid, one of the lyrics, afraid if I spoke, what I would have would disappear. For God's sake, Hannah, let me breathe. This is like a bedroom pop Elton John piano ballad. I love the lush, string-heavy, sparkling ending to the entire record. This entire thing just only got better for me on re-listens. To scores and numbers are stupid, especially when you're talking about emotional art like this. But I think that in my estimate, it went up like a solid 1.5 since my first listen. It is an album with specific grooves and sonic aesthetics that you do need to settle into. But basically, this is the experience that I wanted to have with the previous Black Dresses album that we covered last year, both instrumentally and thematically. And it may only be the start of the but I can confidently it was a banner release and cannot recommend this to anybody who listens to our podcast enough. It's a truly special thing, and I love it.
Yeah. Like, we've covered records by people we know before, like August, of course, and Jake and Morgan's friend. And there is always, like, a moment of relief when you, like, breathe in and you're like, it's good. Nothing quite, but like the moment the chorus of I Tread Water started for the first time, I felt like my blood racing. And then the second time where it has the drums kicking in, it was like, that's what it feels like to be alive.
Catchy as fuck.
Yeah. We have also, I was surprised by how much this record is just wall-to-wall pop bangers, you know. Like, every record just goes and it's incredibly emotional, but has this amazing, like, pop appeal. Even while there are songs on here that, like, I noticed percussion influences that I associated with IDM, and other ones where, like, on Weird Place, it's just like straight, like, really poppy drums. And it just brings in all of these influences. I was vocally reminded of Devi McCallan. God knows why I'd be thinking of that. Devi McCallion, whatever.
No, I had the same thought, Saoirse.
Thank you. But yeah, again, also felt like hyper pop, bedroom pop all over this record. But it takes in so many other influences, and it's so diverse, and the record goes so many places, but it still feels like a coherent voice, and that's always really impressive. But yeah, we have covered lots and lots of low-budget trans artists on this show, which I love that we do, and I want to keep doing it. And a lot like with God Has Nothing to Do with This or Peaceful as Hell, they put the transness right at the front of the lyrical subtext. What I found super effective about this record is the way in which it touches on that experience in a way where transness is always in the background, but the foreground is always something much more universal. And what it does is it allows, well, I think like cis audiences, even though I'm not a member of that audience, it allows cis audiences to probably engage with it on a much more visceral level, which is super rad. I'm not denigrating the other way of doing it. God knows I'm not. But I think that's the way they tread that line, super, super impressive. There isn't really a bad song here, be it the real drive and sort of pop propulsion of I Tread Water, a Weird Place, or the epic sweep of the two closers, which are probably the two best tracks on the record, if we're being perfectly frank.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, the way that the human experience, let alone the trans experience, is expressed with such poignancy and catchiness and humanity is excellent. I love this record. Good job, Hannah. Good job.
I had no expectations of what this even was, what it was going to be, because basically it was like, Tyler was just like, I'm mutuals with this person. She writes for Pitchfork sometimes. She's releasing an album. Let's review it. And I was like, all right, fuck yeah. So I had no idea what it would sound like or even what it would be. And like, I turned it on and listened to the whole thing, and I was like, huh. If you told me that, like, this, like, wasn't a person that we were connected to in any way, like, through, like, whatever degrees of separation. Like, I would just be like, this is probably by a popular artist who does really cool stuff. And then I look at her Spotify, or the Fell from the Tree Spotify specifically, and it's like 40 listeners monthly, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? What?
Yeah.
You all get a grip, like, societally. Like, what are you doing? I think the biggest draw is Hannah, both as a vocal presence and as a writer. Very, very strong songwriting here, lyrically. Every experience that she wants to get across, I think she conveys with both like a really strong individual voice and a sort of universality that I find really appealing. And that's, I think, part of what Saoirse was getting at, that I really agree with, is that there's a universality to the way the emotions are conveyed on this album that, like, I think regardless of your background and your prior experiences, you have pretty strong odds of latching onto something here.
Have you been alive the last year? Yes?
Yeah.
You will probably be like, damn, girl, you speak it. She's spitting.
Live your truth. Hell yeah. Comparatively, at least thus far, it does sound like I'm a little less hot on this than some of us. I think part of this is like this album is so sonically varied and like borderline experimental, nebulous as that term is on some occasions, that like it's just going for so many sounds within this particular musical idiom that not all of them hit for me. I think Never Alone is the immediate standout for me in that regard. Just not my vibe, and I can't say I cared for the feature on that song much at all. But those moments are few and far between, and Like, the album is sequenced so brilliantly. When you're off of a moment that you don't 100% vibe with, and you're on to the next one, it's like the one before it didn't even really happen. So it just doesn't impact the experience all that much. In a just universe, this is an artist and an album that would be blowing up right now, and I consider it our God-given duty to try to make that happen.
It's
Hell
also
yeah.
important to note that, like, of everyone on this podcast, this is specifically of, like, the Venn diagram of things that this is directly influenced by. It is 100% the least your thing of
Oh, yeah.
anyone here. It's like you who are just like, yeah, the Charlie album didn't do anything for me. The Black Dresses album didn't do anything for me.
Like-
And it's just like the fact that this
Like-
was good at all with you is a testament to how good it is is at making music.
Like like I'm even kind of mid on the Postal Service, which is like a stone's throw from Death Cab for Cutie. That's how much like this is not really my bag, generally speaking. But that has less to do with the sound of the Postal Service and more to do with the fact that it's a singles album. But anyway,
I like this album a little bit more than I like the Postal Service, if I'm
Oh,
being
yeah.
entirely honest with you.
Yeah.
The
Musical
District
credibility
Tonight
destroyed.
and Such Great Heights, 10 out of 10 songs. The rest of it, Anyway, that's me.
Nice. Good.
August.
Oh boy.
Ouch.
No, that's not.
This is
not.
this
To
is
be,
debate.
to be fair to
You're
August,
baiting us again.
to be fair to August, he starts every single review with "Oh boy,"
Yeah.
said at that
Fair.
exact time.
That fair.
Yeah. No, that's. I was gonna say that's just how I start every review. But yeah.
Oh boy.
This was certainly fighting an uphill battle with me in that I'm not too hot on what it's been influenced by. I'm not too hot on a lot of these kind of sounds in general. But, and the big but here is, I do, as a whole, enjoy this album. I think it is good, and I'll kind of get into that as we tend to do, as is the nature of a review. Yeah, what immediately stands out to me in terms of influences, and Morgan kind of already got to this, was Postal Service. That's what I heard a good deal of sprinkled across this record. And that could just be because I'm decently familiar with Give Up, but regardless, and I had kind of noticed that before I even looked at the page of Spotify influences, which we were so generously given by Hannah, because of course we got a big old press release, which certainly boosted all of our egos.
Yeah, not gonna lie, that made me feel
It-
so good.
It didn't hurt nothing. I'll tell you that much.
No, yeah, I think the opener, I Tread Water, kicks off the record very nicely. The song has this really fun, bubbly, bouncy quality to it, despite, of course, in contrast to a lot of the writing on here, which is very, very lonely, isolated, depressive, as Jake, Morgan, Saoirse, everyone has already commented on before. And knowing this track was mixed by someone else who did not mix the rest of the album was not a particular surprise to me, because it does stick out in terms of a bit of the sound of it, in my opinion. But I think it's still quite a good way to get us going. What you want is a really nice, more subdued moment on the album, and I feel this is one of just and Morgan already got into this pretty well, just that a lot of the appeal of the ideas presented across this album is that if you don't like one thing, you're most certainly sure to like something else on it. Weird Place has a lot of nice energy to it. I love the way this song can just rise up and fluctuate in terms of the levels of energy presented throughout the song, throughout the album. The chorus is very catchy. It's quite nice. The song "Good Things" I found to be a bit too repetitive. The chorus felt, for me, overused, almost cheapened. But I did think the outro to this song was very cool, and it did make up for that. And yeah, as Morgan got into, because I'm gonna apparently steal every point he made, the central issue for me is kind of exemplified by Never Alone, in that I find a lot of these songs to just feel very inconsistent in terms of just a bit of the sound, the mixing of the songs. Here, I just found the vocals to completely smother out the instrumental. I did not like the sound of it, and it wasn't really aided all that much by the feature, which likewise I did not really care for. What tends to bring me back into the album is that even if I do have problems with it, there are cool moments in every song. Like there's no song on here I feel is just a complete whiff. They're just like a breaking point. I really like the subject matter. I think it's a quite unique song. It's just the drums, I do not like how they sound. They sound way too loud, almost bordering on blown out in the mix for me. And the
I
same
would agree.
yeah.
Forgot to mention that in my segment, but that was one of those choices that just did not. It ain't for me, Chief.
No. Morgan and August be mirroring shirts and opinions today.
Yeah.
Damn.
And the same mixing problem I do find on other songs on the record. I think it persists onto the next track, Long Road, but that has significantly less presence from the drums in that song. So, it worked out for me, didn't bug me as much. And Dress, in stark contrast, as has already been stated, is just one of the best moments on here. Here in particular, I thought the percussion was very nice. I thought it worked well here as one of the most hard-hitting moments in terms of writing on the album. In general, I do like a lot of the writing, and most of the time it hits home for me. Dress, a prime example of this. And basically it's an album for me that is not devoid of great moments, but those great moments are just balanced out by decisions that I just do not care for whatsoever. They just completely don't work for me, to be frank. I would be curious to see how this band continues and progresses on from this point. And yeah, that's basically what I thought.
Very fair review, I
Well,
think.
that's the thing, is that this needs to be considered a victory because you've officially won over the Simon Cowell of the podcast.
Don't ever say
Oh,
that again.
no.
I was going to say that surely there
no.
must be a better.
I would.
That's
You know what? I'm not going to
insane.
ask.
That's maybe the meanest thing that anybody's ever said to another person on this show.
Yeah, no, I feel crushed.
I was like, I'm broken now.
The
I need
difference-
time to heal.
The difference being that August has taste.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It also is a person.
Miss.
I think it's a very fair review. I think August's review is very fair and kind of touches on something I wanted to bring up, which is that one could potentially accuse us of having perhaps a conflict of interest in reviewing this or any album by someone that we have even a tangential relationship to. So just worth acknowledging that obviously we're going to be entirely honest, and we have been entirely honest about how we feel about this record. It just happens to be that the majority of us, all of us think that it is genuinely quite good, and a good chunk of us think that it's fucking great. And I am going to join the choir of people singing this album's praises, and even going as far as to say that I think it is great. It's an album that
What?
has, yeah, I know, right? Crazy. It's an album.
I
It's
can't
funny.
believe you've done this.
It's only inspired by lots of things you like. It's fine.
Yeah, it is it is an album that has grown on me. I think the first time I heard it, I found it pleasant and moving and affecting, but I did have some issues with some of the mixing decisions and certain qualities of songs, some songs being less immediate than others in terms of the way that they hit me and memorability. But I will say that most of those feelings lessened, if not went away completely, the more time that I spent with this record. And I think it was particularly helpful to have the lyric sheet and also to have some insights into what was inspiring these songs. I think there are some really interesting observations in terms of what inspired the songs and what they're about that go beyond simply, you know, feelings and actually touch on some really difficult situations and experiences, many of which I found quite relatable. But yeah, I think this is an immaculate sounding record for the most part. I do have some mixing qualms, but they're not as significant of a detractor for me as they are perhaps for August or Morgan. Sometimes I felt that the way that vocals were set in the mix in relation to some of the instrumentation occasionally felt uneven. I think the most overt example of this is on Body, where I find the vocals to be practically inaudible, and they would have had no idea what the song we were about if it weren't for the lyric sheet. But I do enjoy what's going on instrumentally in that song very much. It's the interlude on the album, but by no means does it feel slight. It has quite an effective punch to it. It's just that it's very difficult to tell what's being sung in that particular song. But for the most part, I think that the record sounds great. Tread Water is obviously a really propulsive opener. It has these thumping bassy drums that almost feel garagey to me. I was actually, the track that it reminded me of was Frail State of Mind from the 1975's most recent album, one of the highlights on that record, and I think this has the same sort of instrumental energy. It's got, again, more of a garagey feel than some of the other tracks on the record, which feel more akin to sort of indie pop or even indie rock in structure and the way the instrumentation and rhythms are organized. I have to say, while the mixing is not always perfect, I think the mixing is really, really good across this record, generally speaking. And I do want to counter August and say that I think that for the most part, the drums and the percussion on this record sounds really good. Definitely feels like a bedroom pop record for the most part, with the standouts like I Tread Water and Dress being songs that sound much bigger and sort of go beyond that. But I think that the bedroom pop aesthetic and the sonic signifiers of that are actually endearing charms of this record to me. I don't find them to necessarily be things that detract from the experience or in any way detract from the power of what Hannah's doing and how Hannah's expressing herself. If anything, they maybe enhance it. That makes the record feel a little bit more intimate, particularly with regard to how the vocals are mixed. They sound simultaneously lonesome and intimate and close to you. I think that I connect quite quickly with Hannah before I even start processing what she's singing about on this record. She has a beautiful vocal tone, and obviously the Postal Service comparison is obvious, and multiple people have made it. A comparison that stood out to me that Hannah, I think, also brought up in her press notes, but felt closer to what this album reminds me of than Postal Service, is the similar bedroom pop project Baths, which have put out 3 fantastic records. Highly recommend them, and have a very similar aesthetic to this. Even some similar kind of themes that are touched on in terms of the queer experience, in various shades and sexuality to a certain degree. But also just aesthetically, there's obviously a little bit of a debt owed to that project here, which I personally loved to hear because I adore baths, and it was great to feel like I was listening to a record that in some respects could have been produced by Will Weisenfeld of Baths. Weird Place is a great song that touches on reckoning with toxic relationships you experienced when you were young and or vulnerable, that you're perhaps not able to recognize for how hurtful that they are at that time. There's just, I really dig the writing here, and I find myself kind of just sort of walking around my flat singing to myself, I was in a weird place when I lost you, Hook, and yeah, just a really great song. The title track is painfully relatable. It's a song about growing up and confronting the image that your parents had for what they imagined you would be, and trying to reconcile your feelings for them with your distance from that vision. I think quite a touchy and a subject that requires nuance, I think, to really express. And Hannah does it beautifully. Let me just get the lyric sheet up here. There's a moment in this song, towards the end of the song, where she sings, "Forgive me when I act like you're not doing enough because you're doing so much. If you feel like you can't be enough, know you are as much as you can be, and that's enough." That's such a beautiful sentiment, obviously, but it's the kind of thing that I have had a number of people, including my parents, try to express to me in some form at some point, but kind of fail because either they don't get it or they don't put it right, or they're missing the point of what I'm trying to tell them that they're responding to. And hearing the sentiment expressed perfectly here was quite cathartic for me. It allowed me a moment of like just living with that was really beautiful. And the song is great as well. Again, some beautiful insights and picture. Hannah paints this incredibly detailed picture of the mental frustration that you experience when you're trying to, overcome this internal crisis you're having about your own identity, as well as having to manufacture your identity in the eyes of the people who love you, but perhaps you're terrified to let into who you really are. But also, no, you have to inevitably. A lot to unpack there, but it's all wonderfully expressed. I love the way that Enough kind of flows into Good Thing, which is one of the darker sounding songs on the record, sees Hannah reckoning with her womanhood and the emotions that surround embracing it and her identity. The sentiment of, you told me this should be a good thing, is just devastating, and beautifully expressed. And just individual lines in the song and across many songs on this record just instantly stand out by how kind of imagistic and stark and startling they are. Sleeves pulled up to feel your hands. I could hear your voice for hours. Beautiful clothes I can't fit in. Is this supposed to be my truth? Just these sentiments like that are really, like, I think towards the center of this record is where you get really some of the darker moments, and they're so wonderfully handled. I for one really love the song Never Alone. I enjoy how this song and Breaking Point together both have two of the most propulsive and noisy instrumentals on the record that I think serve the songs quite well. I enjoy the rapper's Lone Moon, who features on Never Alone. I think that her feature is really good. It adds a lot of character to the song, compliments Hannah while not simply being an extension of her personality, but actually quite a different personality that complements Hannah and expresses similar emotions through a different lens and reflects the emotional turmoil the song's wrapped up in. I think that's really great. It's one of my favorites on the record. Again, I alluded to the more abrasive instrumental of Breaking Point. I definitely can understand the sonic timbres on this track not working for some, but for one, I mean, obviously as a person who enjoys the the hyper pop, the black dresses stuff. I don't particularly mind more lo-fi or blown out aesthetic qualities to things like percussion. And I think that it complements the song really well. It almost feels as though the clattering drums and noisy instrumental is almost trying to attack or warp the vocal at certain points. I think it's incredibly, I imagine it must have been quite difficult mixing the vocal so that it wasn't drowned out entirely, but that this effect of chaos between the two elements is expressed really clearly. I like the way the song kind of just fizzles into this harsh, buzzing synth tone at the very end that feels as though it's flattened the song completely. I love the vocal loop sound that drives Long Road, another highlight on the record for me. And again, this song has quite hard-hitting drums that I really, really enjoy. Tonally, I think that they sound great. Great song. And obviously the two twin peaks of the record's final stretch, Dress is basically everything that Jake particularly said about the song. I want to heartily co-sign. It's comfortably the best track on this record. It is obviously intended to be and is the culmination of Fell from the Tree as a musical project and the culmination of Hannah's personal development as reflected through her art. But I think that it's intangibly tied to Good Advice, the de facto closer. These two songs are counterpoints to each other. The darker moments of Dress reflected by the more optimistic, if bittersweet, outlook that you get on Good Advice. I think that Jake's already touched on the way that the structure of Dress is clearly inspired by and Hannah touches on this in her liner notes as well, the structure of everything's no reptiles. And I mean, you only have to bring up that song as an inspiration to get my attention, obviously. And I think it's to Hannah's credit that song, which is one of the most emotionally potent pop songs I've ever heard, that she manages to match that level of emotional intensity in her own way with this song. And just, I've bawled my eyes out to this song more times than I care to mention. The way that she repeats like lines like "I can't move in this room" and I lose my shit. I try to pick a line that really stands out, but I think that Jake kind of already beat me to it with the line singing to myself, "I don't want to die in here, but I don't want to lose it all out there." That's basically, I think, the line that sums up the song. And Good Advice is a brilliant closer. I love the way this song swells, the inclusion of strings on this record, on this song in particular. It really feels as though the whole album is reaching this point of cathartic acceptance and having gone through the wilderness, and now we're in this place of comparative freedom. Like, there's still a hard journey ahead of us. Like, it's not that all the struggle has been overcome, but it's that you're standing at a point, maybe the first point, where you feel like, holy shit, I've actually achieved something really difficult for myself, and I've actually made it through some really tough shit. And even though the journey's not over, I need to be proud of myself for having made it this far. And Hannah, I hope you are proud of yourself for having made it this far. And it was a delight to see you reach the point where you were able to reveal your identity to the world, the truth of who you are. And I think that to be able to express that so beautifully through this record, it's truly the mark of a great artist. And I don't say that to be fawning. I don't say that out of obligation. I am hyper conscious of the fact that we have been kind of dishing out so much adoration for this record, but it really does deserve it. And for our listeners,
I mean, it's like, once again, maybe she should have made a worse album. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
no,
I want to co-sign everything Tyler said just now. about how important this record is and how wonderful it is that Hannah was able to achieve what she achieved through this record in the way she did.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone is else besides Hannah is obviously listening today, then please go and check this out. It's really wonderful, and I think genuinely, no matter who you are, you'll find a resonance in at least some of this music, and you will not regret having listened to this album.
If it can affect you even a quarter of the amount that it affected me, it is an experience that is more than worthwhile.
Absolutely, 100%. Deep breath, everyone.
Favorite tracks and ratings.
Favorite tracks and ratings. Let's do our regular order. Jake, why don't you go first?
Surprisingly kind of difficult, but I will have to co-sign just the overall sentiment of the fact that I think that Dress is an astonishing musical achievement. That is my favorite song on the record. I will say that also Good Advice is a phenomenal closer. And I will say my other favorite one. God, that's tough. I'll throw out some I can't speak today. Some love for Long Road, and least favorite, I guess Body, but I mean I still like it and I like its placement on the album. It just does less for me than the other ones, and I give the album an 8.5 out of 10.
Nice.
All right, well, that's me. Three favorite tracks are Dress, I Tread Water, and probably Weird Place. Least favorite is definitely Never Alone. I would give this a 6 out of 10.
Neato. Morgan.
My three favorites, to the surprise of everybody, are Dress, Good Advice, and I Tread Water. Least favorite, I'm probably going to go Breaking Point. And for rating, like, let's call it a 7.5.
7.5 out of 10. Right. So for moi, my favorite tracks are Treadwater. The two closest, Dress and Good Advice. If I had to choose least favorite, I would probably go with Good Thing, just because there were synth lines in it. It was a bit louder than I would have liked them to be. That's about it. And I'm going to give this record an 8 out of 10.
Okay, my favorite tracks were Dress, obviously, Good Advice, and Never Alone. If I had to pick a least favorite, it would be Body, and I'm going to give this record an 8.5 out of 10.
Nice. I typed that wrong. Give me a sec.
8.5.
I don't know why I did that. I don't have a can key on my keyboard, so I don't know how that happened.
Oh, the can key.
Yeah, exactly.
For when you wanna buy I need some beans. Can.
Maybe like beans.
Oh wow. So that gives it the same score as Arc by Everything. Ultimate Success Today. Lament by Touche Amore, and the Violet Femme self-titled.
Fantastic.
That's pretty good.
Fat ass company.
Yeah, so very good record. And let's move on now to the second album we're going to discuss today.
Must we?
Yes, we must. So it is by a pop punk band called the Dirty Nil, and the album is entitled
The Dirty Nil.
The album is entitled Fuck Art. Now,
Yeah,
Morgan, I believe, was the reason we're discussing this. So Morgan, why don't you explain yourself?
You know what? Once again, fuck you guys, because I try to find interesting things to bring to this podcast every now and then, because I'm not always the one who is like, we should review this album. So when I try to bring in something interesting worth talking about, and it tends to blow up in my face because the albums that I take a chance with suck. So I'll just go into the review.
No, please.
Well, okay. Sure.
No, let this man.
What
have this.
I was obviously hamming it up a bit when I introed you, but what I meant was, who was this? Like, how did you become aware of this band, and why did you choose them?
Right. Okay. Well, I I heard of them because they were #1 charting on Sputnik Music for like a day or two. And I was like, oh, that's a 2021 release. It's the year 2021. We should probably review an album from 2021 on our show. And it was like I was looking at the like recommended artists page under their Sputnik page, and it was like Pup and the Menzingers, and I think Spanish Love Songs might have been there. So I was like, oh fuck yeah, let's go. Yeah, so this is how we got here. And okay, I am going to say that I don't think this album sucks. It is extraordinarily mid. It sounds fine. I think the vocals are mixed a little bit too front forward, but otherwise sounds pretty great. I think a lot of the playing, particularly the guitar playing, ranges from impressive to really creative and interesting ways for a pop punk group of this ilk. The thing is that the songs are just not there. The writing is either kind of like going through the motions of this particular brand of pop punk, or annoying, because like I like what came to mind for a lot of this record to me is like, all right, so this is like what the first Third Eye Blind album would have sounded like if Stephen Jenkins couldn't write. Okay. Yeah, great, wonderful. Damn it.
I love that Blink-182 song.
Yeah, it's just I didn't think this particular brand of almost, I almost want to call it grown-up pop punk, like the stuff by the Menzingers and the Lawrence Arms and so on, just bands in that ilk. I didn't know that was a popular enough genre to inspire 99-cent versions of them. But like, here we are. Here we have the dollar store pup. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's the same kind of almost like thrash influenced level stuff as 2019's Morbid stuff, but like it's just so tepid and rote and uninspired and sometimes actively annoying. Like, I can look past the lyrics of this record because I think as a vocal presence, the guy is good. He's compelling enough, I think. But like, if I do actually have to sit here and think about the lyrics for very long at all, I start to hate everything. Because it's just like, stop being so white. Like, that's the thing that comes to mind immediately. It's just like, you're making punk music look bad with all of this whiteness, all of this. I could be your doom boy. Like, what the fuck? Will you shut up, man?
The thing about that line is like, he's like, we could listen to Slayer, and I'm like, you could not sound less like someone who is into Slayer if you tried.
Rivers Cuomo made this work.
It's the same.
That's as far as it got.
We can listen to Slayer in my car or whatever.
In the back of my Dodge Caravan.
Dodge Caravan, that's right. Has the same energy as the dude from Wheatus saying, let's listen to Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
The fuck?
And that was like a much better song.
Exponentially better song.
Well, that's a song that's better because it's kind of like self-aware and
exactly
about it.
Yeah.
Which gets to the core of what I don't like
like
about this record, and I'll get to that.
It has like charm, and charm.
Hooks.
It's just
Does it?
Well, the Wheatus song does.
The Wheatus song does, yeah.
Yeah, that's my point.
All right.
This doesn't. Well, I mean, it
August,
has
that's horrifying.
I saw a
Is it-
horror
is
short
it-
film last night where the monster looked exactly like
I
that.
think there's a creepypasta where there's like a dog that keeps evolving. That like murders you.
Smile
There's a-
Dog. That's the one. It's-
Yeah, and there's a photo of it. That's
An
like
album
black.
so thoroughly uninteresting, we have started to talk about creepypastas.
Fucking smile. I actually
that
had a
photo looked like
creepypasta YouTube channel for a while,
Hey.
you know.
Hey,
You had Hunting Bigfoot, didn't you?
hey.
Yeah, I had Hunting Bigfoot and
Oi.
Searching for Slender.
Am I on fucking mute? You shut up so I can finish the segment. God damn. Yeah, this album is boring, and I wish we weren't in such a dry spell so we could skip it over altogether. It's just annoying because I wanted this to be so good, because we had Spanish love songs around this time last year, and that was that made it all the way to the end of the year in terms of like top 5, top 3 material. And no, it sounds like a record that is written by people who used to be good at this and are like 35 now and are just no longer good at it. And it's just still singing about listening to Slayer in the back of a Dodge Caravan. It's like,
Yeah.
if these guys are 28, like, retired, you've already
Log off.
Yeah.
you're already
Like
done.
it's like the last all-time low record, but made by younger people.
No,
Yeah,
that's-
and it is better. It's a lot more competent than that.
Yeah,
It is-
absolutely.
No, it's like that's a crime against humanity that should have been tried at Nuremberg.
There,
But that leads me really well into my review. If you're done, I don't know.
Oh,
if you want to carry on
yeah,
if
go
you're not.
ahead.
Okay. So when you say this guy's a compelling vocal presence, to set this joke up, the lead singer of All Time Low is called Alex Gaskarth. This sounds like Alex Gaskarth if he sounded even more like he was castrated at birth.
yeah,
Dream Boy, not a great opener.
Doom Boy.
Doom Boy, thank you.
Who gives a fuck?
Because Doom Boy is somehow stupider.
Yeah. To contextualize my review, I feel slightly embarrassed by my opinion now, because after a first listen where I just had like the riffs and thought they were okay without thinking about the words or the vocal presence, I immediately direct messaged Morgan and was like, "Yo, where the fuck did you hit this? Reminding me of bands I like." I said Prince Daddy and the Hyena, which is a band I like very much. Also a band called Swimmers, which is the band that Billy Joel Armstrong's kid is in, that have a couple of decent songs.
Yeah, but Billy Joe Armstrong's son, rapist.
Is he
Wait,
actually?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, irrelevance.
Well, now
Oh.
I can't listen to the 2 good songs Swimmers have.
Yeah.
Anyway,
What a loss.
really. So Doom Boy is a very, very silly song to open with, especially because the riffs are half decent, the backing band's okay, but the vocal presence is obnoxious and the lyrics are puerile. More on that later. But then we move on to track 2, Blunt Force Concussion, a track I hate with a visceral passion. The chorus, give me 1/2 blunt force concussions, crack my head in 2, just don't put me through saying I love you with a minor chord, so you know he means it.
I believe that's
And-
what Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah was about.
But A, these are A, some of those cliche lyrics I've ever heard. B, some of those cliche chords I've ever heard used, especially that horribly on the nose shift into a minor key at the end, which every pop band for a generation has used at least 5 times. And it's just, there's a subplot in the second Transformers film where Shia LaBeouf can't tell Megan Fox she loves her, and it's only on his deathbed that Megan Fox says that she loves him to save his life, to give him the motivation to live. And I'm just very, very like fed up of this trope that like men can't say they love them, just not like manly and either. Yeah, we can hold hands and all that shit and like do fun things, but don't tell me you love me because that's like so cringe. And I'm just like, it is. Can men please be emotionally vulnerable for a single fucking second?
This album is very literally posting cringe.
For real. Not least on track 4, Done With Drugs,
Oh, God.
which is a track I hate mainly for taking this puerile attitude to subject matter that means things to a lot of people, not least me. There are many great songs in the pop punk genre about being on drugs or dealing with a drug addiction, but the chorus, I've got responsibilities, that's why I'm done with drugs. Ain't doing it for no one. I'm just giving them up. They've been good and they've been sweet. Oh, we're talking to 5-year-olds here.
They've been good, they've been sweet, but now it's time to get clean. That's fucking Rivers Cuomo level,
That's
right?
that's
right?
make-believe
You know,
era Weezer
That's
shit.
Beverly Hills by Weezer level writing.
No, what I think of in particular is like the promotional stint Joe Strummer did for Cut the Crap by The Clash, where it was like, drugs are over. If you do a drug from now on, you're a hippie. I don't give a toss what you think. I'm Joe Strummer.
And it's like, it's not like lyrics are the most important thing in the world to pop punk, but like Spanish love songs did it really well. I would even go as far as to say there are a couple of all-time low songs that approach very serious things with an actual level of understanding of what they're talking about. This feels like it was written by someone who was like seen leaving Las Vegas and is like, I'm going to write a song about this, and they are 14.
I have seen alcoholism in movies. I will write a song about it.
It's just
They
like
didn't even have the decency to die like Nick Cage.
Yeah, it's like, it's not even like lyrics. Like I said, lyrics don't need to be like fucking W.B. Yeats in pop punk, but I would at least like summon my brain to be thinking about the resonance of what you're saying a little bit.
Like, Dookie is the epitome of this genre. Look at the lyrics on that album. They're not great. The album still kicks ass.
Yeah, but like Welcome to Paradise is like about a thing and it's well approached with like wit.
Good.
Like, Ride or Die is just obnoxious as fuck. It opens with like a fun riff, but devolves into areas of pop punk and emo pop and hard rock pastiche bands that were much better, that have trodden exactly the same places. So it just is kind of boring. And there are a couple of half decent songs in the middle, like Hello Jealousy and Hang Your Moon, which I have some fondness for. They imply better things for the band later, even if they're not being delivered on in this record. And yet, The Guy Who Stole My Bike is anonymous, and One More in the Bill is again an attempt to make like a swimmer's song without the songwriting ability. And you kind of need songwriting ability to make a song good. So that's sort of my rant.
When he sings about like leaving politics alone on the last track.
Oh,
it has,
fuck! No,
no.
fuck that.
Just let me finish. It has the same energy as a dude who like said some dubious shit on Twitter and has been called out, and now he's decided, nah, I'm leaving politics alone because like you can't say shit anymore.
Well, it's not just that. It's like this. I mean, the most frustrating thing about it is that there are some members of the band who clearly know what they're doing, and yet it's like fronted by this obnoxious presence.
Look, I'm not going to be as outright negative as most of you probably are. I think this album, when this album does what it does well, I think that it's pretty good. I like the song Damage Control quite a bit. I think it has a cool riff breakdown in it that I think is really awesome. And I actually think that, what's it called? The Guy Who Stole My Bike, I actually think that song is pretty good too. I think that it's kind of the sense of sort of fuck off glee in it is not as irritating on that track as it is on other songs. I think it's kind of funny even, and most crucially, I think the instrumental on the song is really, really cool and energetic and nice. But yeah, like so much of what really causes this album to flatline is so much of what needs to be good to really make something like this work, and that's personality. And this album just has so little of it that it's almost feels like an insult to the kind of music that Heritage comes out of. It almost feels like a real, it's, I don't think it is, but it almost feels like a really cheap attempt at genre parody. And I don't think that's intentional. I think what it is it's just a lack of personality that's so unavoidable that it just feels self-parodic in the way that a lot of the cliches are expressed. And nowhere is this more clear than on Doom Boy, which I can see why this was picked to open the record. Again, I think instrumentally, the song's pretty good. I think that the riffs sound really great. I will also compliment the production on this record, which I think is uniformly good and suits the songs basically as well as it could. This is a record that sounds pretty good. But yeah, like the second you actually start hearing what's being said, it's like shitting on a lasagna or something. I don't know. I'm bad at metaphors today. It's like someone takes a great big dump on a chocolate cake or something. Like it reminded me continuously, and I'm stunned no one else has brought this up yet. Actually, well, I guess this band has been brought up, but it reminded me of the most recent Green Day record in certain respects. I think it's a better album than that one. I didn't.
Yeah.
Are you high?
I didn't think. Well, I didn't think that that album was the absolute nadir of music, like most of you did. But it was.
Lord knows why.
It was very bad. Look, don't get me wrong. It was very bad. And I don't really think there's a whole lot that meaningfully separates what makes that record bad from what lets this record down. And it's just, whether intentional or not, it feels like it's so riddled with cliche and so riddled with like songwriter 101. I'm 15 years old and just bought my first electric guitar and my girlfriend cheated on me and I'm pissed off.
Yeah, like one of my notes is I wrote songs like this 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I hope I've moved on.
Yeah, and let me be your Doom Boy. We could hold hands listening to Slayer in the back of my Dodge Caravan. I've already made this comparison, but that's a Weezer lyric.
Yes, it is.
I'm not even saying like it sounds like it's a Weezer lyric because it's bad and corny. It's a Weezer lyric because it sounds like it's been written exactly the way that Rivers Cuomo writes.
It could have
lyrics.
come off the White Album, which is
Like,
a good record.
I think about that lyric and I hear Rivers Cuomo saying it.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, that's a good, actually, Weezer's a good comparison in terms of trying to get at what makes a record like this bad. Because, like, that lyric would have fit, like you say, Saoirse, that lyric would fit right in on White Album. It would also fit right in on Make Believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of those albums is good. One of those albums is bad. One of those albums has genuine, like, hooks that stick with you and personality and instrumental focus. And the other album is a sloppy mess of genre cliches. And that's basically what this is. Elvis 77 really rubs me the wrong way with its smarmy attitude and the why didn't you call your mama more refrain. I'm like, they say that a million times, by the way, I counted. And it's like, bitch,
A million.
I don't call my mother more because I don't enjoy having those conversations. Stop fucking telling me, fucking patronizing me. I don't care.
About
Even
this
if
incredibly specific thing.
it just really grated me for some reason. Even though I'm sure it's directed at some character who's a piece of shit and doesn't care about their family or whatever, but it's like, I don't want to hear that right now. And maybe that's just me.
No, there's this. I feel like that's a universal thing of just, it's like, you don't know me, fuck off.
And the album lapses into, from this point, kind of just lapses into being anonymous and middling, apart from the two songs which I shouted out that I do enjoy. Ride or Die sounds like a pop punk band trying to write a Killers song, like a day and age / Battleborn era Killers song, but being unable to rise beyond the cliches to the endearing sincerity that Brandon Flowers often brings to that band.
Yeah.
There appears to be a line in Hang Your Moon, which the singer forgot to come back and finish, so we just have a placeholder, do.
Oh, God.
Like, literally, that makes no sense in the context of the lyrics. So I'm convinced that he just put it there thinking, I need to come back and write a line to fill that.
That was when I gave up trying to meet this album halfway. I was
Just
just
like
like, oh, fuck you.
I will say, though, that with regard to Hanging Moon, I like the blissed out ending of the song. Again, instrumental sounds really nice. Yeah. Because Possession, I think, is kind of catchy, even if it's pretty slight, and I don't really care for what's happening lyrically. And yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. I enjoy this album when I am focusing on the instrumentals and when I'm not really focusing on anything, to be honest. And it's just kind of washing over me. But the second I sit down to kind of try and pick apart what makes this album good or bad, it all just kind of falls flat. And I'm like, yeah, there's so many bands who do this kind of thing better. Dollar Store Pup, I think, is the best way of possibly describing this, and I can't imagine topping that.
Well, in order to like, I'm not gonna say anything fucking different. Obviously, I feel basically exactly the same as everybody else here. I mean, like, again, like my first note is so they're pup, parenthetical, irreverent pop punk sensibility, slight metal influence, shot in the arm of adrenaline approach to song structure, except just not as good. And I think there's a key reason as to why is that it's just like with pop, like I listen to morbid stuff today just to be like, okay, what makes this album work? That makes this album not work, and that there is, even though that Pup is a band that is just like they do have sort of more like really frank, honest emotional moments on songs like City or Scorpion Hill. They also just have a lot of songs that are just them being snotty, bratty assholes, and like. But there's also an honesty in those songs of just like you have a song like "See You at Your Funeral," which is just it's a song about like making life choices that are good purely to spite your ex that you don't like, and it's like it's just a really funny idea, and you're also just kind of like, yeah, I get that, I've had that feeling before. Whereas like the ideas on this album are just not rooted in any kind of like truth or experience. And I'm not saying that like, oh, you need to root it in something profound like a truth or a human, like, no, this is just like a basic thing when you make art, is that it's just like, oh, this needs to come from something. Like Tyler, you said that this album just basically sounds like a parody. It's like taking the piss. It's like, yeah, it sounds like a parody except without the intent of being a parody. So it's just like, what even is this at the end of the day? I think the most quality thing about it is that it does in fact sound good. The production is good. A lot of the riffs are heavy and mean, and like, he mentions Slayer on Doom Boy, and it's like, yeah, a lot of the riffs here are actually reminiscent of bands like thrash metal like Slayer, and it's just like, I can get behind that. That's a cool approach to your idea. However, I think the biggest obstacle for this is honestly just, I hate the lead singer. And I know that sounds weird because it's just like, oh, what are you fucking talking about? He sounds like every other pop punk singer. And it's like, yeah, that's fucking exactly why. It sounds like I'm listening to this and I'm just like, dude could have just walked off of Simple Plan and could be singing, and I would just not be able to tell the difference at all. And it is infuriating. I'm just like, I am listening to auto-generated voice lyrics here, and it makes me want to bash my head into a wall. And I'm somebody who can get behind this kind of music. Specifically, uh, just, again, the lyrics on Doom Boy, Christ on a bike. Um, Done with Drugs is also, it's just like the most, it's like, a great idea for a punk rock song is to brag about how straight-laced you are. Like, what? Why? Why would you do this? And then there's, Hang Your Moon, which Tyler mentioned already, which, like, the insufferable doot-de-doot-doos are just fucking unbearable. I do like the ending of the song. It's a little bit ambitious. If it were executed on a song that was fully formed, I would go as far as to say I like it. But as it stands, Hang Your Moon is just a hodgepodge of nothing ideas, and I do not care for that at all. And that's the album's a swath. It's a slog. There are songs like Possession, Ride or Die, or Blunt Force Concussion, which just strike a balance between tone and heaviness, even though they aren't the most lyrically complex or just outright bad, or like even thematic tracks. But it just works because it's just the band cutting loose and going hard. But the biggest failing, I guess, is in punk music. What I look for above all else is, again, honesty, which irony does not inherently contradict, but there feels like there's very little of that here. It's just them caking themselves in irony and nothing more. Like, instrumentally, the band clearly has their shit together, but there feels like an edge that is missing here that goes for the close of punk music without much of the soul, and that's like the most important thing when you do this music, and it's just like, well, then what are you giving me? And the answer is nothing. So
Yeah, like there's a reason I put the two records I did over there, being Transcend Dysphoria Blues and Holy Ghost. One of those is an emo record that is like every song is just bringing the heart, you know,
Mhm.
and bringing the songwriting and the ideas.
So, August, do you have anything you want to add about Fuck the Dirty Pup?
Yeah, sure.
You ever just have a stroke on air?
First off, I want to comment on the title, "Fuck Art," which is just like the worst title of all time. Like fart. You got like it's fart, like F art, fart. What are we doing here?
That would be a
that's
better
just-
name.
To call back to an earlier episode of this podcast where August said this, are we serious?
Yeah.
But what did you say that about?
I don't remember.
Oh,
I just remember they said that.
Yeah, I remember it too.
Yeah, it was about a new release.
It
and
was
August couldn't believe we were reviewing it.
because it was so fucking shit. And this is
Anyway,
like
continue.
Yes.
this is like yeah, absolutely nothing is memorable about it aside from two things which stood out to me. The first 10 seconds, the first 10 seconds or so of the album, I was like, okay, this could be something interesting. Vocals start up, I tune out, and I'm gone. I could be at fucking Saturn by the time this album is over. Other moment was the ending skit of Elvis 77, which was just like, okay, I guess this is happening.
I just imagine that once the vocals start on Doom Boy, August just his skin fades away and he becomes blue, and he's Dr. Manhattan.
He is
A tire of Earth.
Yeah.
Fucking Philip Glass score kicks in.
Yeah.
A tire of being caught in the tangle of their lives.
Yeah. But yeah, no, there's nothing to say about this outside of like it's just Weezer, except by way of bad. So Weezer, but no. The one other moment that was kind of funny to me was the fucking bike cuck song, where it's literally just the bike cuck meme.
Oh, that song sucks.
It's terrible, but that's all I could think about, and that's the album. That's all I have to say.
It's like the Weezer comparison is spot on, but like even at their worst, Weezer were never this uninspired. Like they were always more interesting than this, even when they were like unlistenable.
Yeah.
Pacific
I
Daydream.
can't believe I didn't think of the bike cuck meme. I think maybe on some subconscious level, that's why I enjoyed that song.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well. Yeah. Favorite tracks and ratings.
Carry on.
Go on.
Let's do reverse. I'll go.
Yeah.
Please.
My favorite. Sorry, just thinking about the bike cuck meme now. My favorite songs are Damage Control, The Guy Who Stole My Bike, and I'll throw in Doom Boy. I mean, we have to pick three, then fine. That's the third best song on the album. And the worst song is probably the most anonymous for me, which is Ride or Die. And I give the album a 5 out of 10.
Okay, Tyler. So for moi, my three favorite tracks are Hello Jealousy, Hanger Moon, excuse me, Doom Boy. My least favorite is Done with Drugs. I'm giving this. I'm gonna give this a 4.
My three favorites are fucking I know Damage Control is one of them. What's Hello Jealousy, even though that is mainly because the name reminds me of the song Hey Jealousy by Gin Blossoms, which is one of the best songs of the 90s.
Damn straight.
Yeah. Hello, jealousy, damage control, and who gives a fuck? Least favorite bike cuck.
Infinitely better name for the album.
Yeah. Fucking Chinese Satellite, I guess.
Morgan give it a rating.
5.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, Chinese Satellite, I got fucking nothing. This is a fucking 4 out of 10.
Jake?
My 3 favorite tracks are... when I looked at my notes for it, it was just like, my 3 favorite tracks are the ones that are the most anonymous because they annoy me the least. So my answer is Hardline by Julian Baker. This gets a 4 out of 10. And my least favorite song is Hang Your Moon because doot 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 doot.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
So my charmed life.
So that
Well, that's another successful episode in the bag.
that's a 4.4 out of 10, which is the same rating as Folklore and Plastic Hearts.
Woo! Just churning them out, aren't we? So yeah, that's what we thought of those albums. One good album, one not so good. But let us know if you've heard either of what you think of them in the comments below. Do you think we were unnecessarily harsh on fuck art? And if so, let us know why. And please go and listen.
Or spend your time listening to Hannah's album instead.
Yeah, please go and listen to Fell from the Tree. And it's really awesome. And yeah.
What are we doing next week, lads?
Next week, we're going to do something a bit different, I think, is the plan.
Yes.
Because as you can see, this week we were a bit thin on the ground for stuff to review. So rather than torture ourselves through a fucking Viagra Boys album next week, we are going to... Hey, it might be good. Who fucking knows? I'll never find out.
Yeah, I'm not going to listen to it.
You know,
The Viagra Boys take on toxic masculinity in their new folk punk album.
Thank
don't
you,
think-
angry
I don't
video
think
game
it's-
nerd.
I don't
I don't
it's
fucking
folk-
know what it is.
I don't think it's folk punk, but
I don't
It's
fucking-
allegedly like post.
In their new electro new swing grindcore album.
Do I fucking care what the genre of the fucking Viagra Boys
meant to
is?
be? That is apparently what this is.
I think the funniest course of events from this point onwards is if that album was actually really good and none of us listened to it because they're called the Viagra Boys.
I hope that's the case.
I will
And like that's a
probably
valid
still listen
excuse.
to it, but God, what an awful name for your band. Jesus wept.
Tyler, what are we doing next week?
So next week we're going to do something special. We're not going to review new releases. We're going to do a special tribute review to MF Doom. In light of his recent passing, we're going to review a classic record that's beloved by many, but perhaps not as recognized generally as some of his other records. We're going to review Vaudeville Villain, which he released under his Victor Vaughan pseudonym. And
Alliteration.
yeah, exactly. We're looking forward to that. And we're also going to do, we normally do a record club episode each week, but we're going to do 2 special record clubs next week on 2 records from the mind of Steven Wilson, one of them being his solo record, Hand Cannot Erase, which is Morgan's recommendation, and then the other being his record with his band Porcupine Tree called Deadwing. These are... if you've been watching us for, more than 10 minutes, you'll know that we are pretty, generally speaking, pretty big Steven Wilson fans. And so...
It's so much so that one of us might be covering 2 top 10 of all time records next week. I'm not going to say who.
Who? I mean, honestly, could it be?
I fucking wonder.
But yeah, that's the episode. Rock over London, rock on Chicago, felt bicycles to design, develop, and deliver.